everybody, and welcome to the New Earth Co-Creators podcast. We are so excited to be here yet
Hello.
again, another day. Woohoo! And
Yes.
of course, I'm Deborah Bishop, or Rev Deb, as many people know me, and I am with the beautiful, the delightful, the amazing, the awesome,
Oh.
the intelligent, the inspiring Isabel and Ty.
All right. That was 5 minutes. Thanks.
We're done.
Oh,
Show's
thank
over.
you so much. It is a beautiful day. I'm finally back on the mend with this stupid cold. And honestly, it wasn't too bad, but it was just, sore throat. So I might feel a little raspy here.
That's okay. Raspy is sexy.
That's what I've heard. That's what she said.
Or what he said, as the case may be. We were doing a little brainstorming. I know you did some meditation and we're telegramming back and forth. And I love the topic we came up with today, which was just this really simple, these two words, that everybody uses, but they tend to use it in one direction and not always the other. And that is the infamous what if.
What if? What if? Yes. I can tell a little bit how that came to be for me for the last couple of days. As everyone knows, or most know, at least who pay somewhat attention with the new East. It's so weird. I live close to New Palestine, and so that was East Palestine in Ohio. It's like, goodness gracious, can we have more Palestines? But what happened, with the spill, and then someone showed me a video called White Noise, and that shows exactly what was shown on the news outlets. And I'm just like, those are identical pictures. Like, what actually happened? Did it actually happen? What was going on? And we're not going into political sides or anything, but that sparked the idea for me, or just even the thought of, what if, no matter where we're at, where we stand with our opinions and what we think is the prediction for the future, or whatever theory we have, what if every single one of us is right? And what if every single one of us is wrong? What if we actually write the playbook by simply agreeing to the idea? Like, how many people have actually seen the trailer to the movie, and subconsciously created the scenario as well? I mean, how weird is it that it ends up in the same city as the movie plays? I mean, it was even filmed there. So is that kind of weird, that makes you really question. I'm like, well, no matter where we're at, what if we're actually writing the playbook?
Right.
What if there is no system in place? What if there is no power that's pulling the strings? What if we're all doing it ourselves, and that we're trying to blame everyone else who we think has the power to create that? What if?
What if? And I love that. And I love taking it that far, because then it takes it to this beautiful illustration of the fact that we're all creating, whether we're doing it consciously or not. We're all constructing the world that we're living in. We're all basically, the choices and decisions we're making or not making, which is making, right? Even if we're not making, like, if you choose not to move, you're still making a choice, right? If you choose not to do something, or just not to make a choice, you're still making a choice, which is sort of fascinating. I've had that debate with individuals before. How am I making a choice if I'm not making a choice? You're making a choice to not make a choice.
Make a choice. That's right.
Right?
You're always making a choice in the moment. You're always manifesting in the moment whatever it is you put attention to, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really sitting here as like, what if everything is really not real? Because really, how do we create reality? Reality is being created by one person having an idea, a group of people agreeing to the idea, then it becomes as a particular truth, and the more conveying we are with the message, the more it becomes reality. And I think the overall timeline of this Earth experience is speeding up. I think we're really, like, because of more and more people. And when we say waking up, what if none of us is actually waking up? What if we're not, like, none of us is awake? What if we're all on our own way, they're still dreaming? What if we're actually awake once we leave this earth plane, once we're ready to leave this earth plane, right?
There's a lot of teachings and philosophies that support that idea, that this is the dream. And this
Yeah.
is like, this is meant to be our lucid dream, right? You
Yeah.
know, lucid dreaming we think of when we're asleep, but what if we can lucid dream when we're awake? What if it's really that's what we're meant to be doing, right? And that really our awakened state and consciousness is when we leave the physical to go back into the energetic and the spiritual, and that is consciousness, right? So how do we bring the consciousness here? That's that quest. And that quest could be like, okay, so what if everybody is agreeing with whatever I've made choices about, right?
Exactly.
So if I say this is the way it is, and the people around me go, yeah, that's the way it is.
And
You
then it
know, we're
spreads, right? Just like
exactly.
influencers. That's why I don't like the word influencers. But at the same time, it is so true because you're influencing the reality, not just of yourself, but of an entire community that is following you and your message. It becomes their reality, it becomes what they live according to. And
Well,
I
and I don't mind influencers for the idea that, they're like experts. That's the sort of, I guess, the millennial, because it kind of came out during the millennial sort of surge, right?
yeah,
Now we're into the Gen X, was it Gen Zs or something?
Gen
But
Z, yeah.
the reality is that influencer kind of came after sort of after expert. You were the expert, now you're the influencer, because with social media now you have influence. And I don't necessarily disregard that, but the thing that I wonder about is, taking responsibility for the influence that you're yielding. That's something that's very important, because a lot of influencers don't do that. They're, and I'd say this with all due respect, because I don't know that they're necessarily awake or aware, so I'm not in any way criticizing anybody. More power to you if you're an amazing influencer and have millions of people following you. That's awesome, right? That's your own reality. That's something you created, so I salute
Yeah.
that for its own entity. What would be lovely at the same time is to see influencers that are also out there, because I've seen them, that are delivering the message that we're talking about too, about consciousness and about creation. So I think it's more, and it's the same thing with experts, it's the same thing with anything. It's what we're focused on. Like, what if I jokingly have said, and I think I've said it on this podcast too before, that I blame the science fiction writers for what we're going through right now, right?
I'm not
Because
kidding. I
what
mean,
if what if
yeah.
it's like these best-selling books that were written like decades ago, years and years ago, and it's like 1984 and all these other things that have come out, even stuff that was written in the 40s and so forth.
Yeah.
And like, you read it and you're looking around going, this is what's happening. And these are books that millions of people read,
That
right?
put into motion,
So
that use the energy of
exactly,
the
we
book,
vision
that
it,
put it
right? We
into
vision it, we
motion.
see it, we project it. It's on the external screen as we're reading it. We're like, whoa, what if?
We get emotionally wrapped up into, and I think that's why we're seeing a speeding up of manifestation right now and right here in this timeline, because emotions are so high. People are so emotionally invested into what they think is the prediction for the future,
Yeah.
that prediction becomes actually true even faster.
Yes.
I mean, you've seen it, 2 years ago, it was predicted what's happening now economically, everything politically. And now look at that. That film, White Noise, was filmed last year. It came out in November of 2022, and the manifestation of it happened in February 2023. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the timelines are becoming shorter and shorter because the emotional charge of it is
Mm-hmm.
getting more and more intense, until I think something happens where we all explode and have to release all of that's coming up, or that we're bottling up because of what's happening, right? I don't know, it's really interesting for me to just even think this through. And you know a lot of things that people tell me are not part of my reality, because I
Right.
don't even pay attention to it. I don't no,
Right.
I don't see this happening, or that doesn't happen in around my house or my property or whatever. um but even now, with all the toxins that are said being in the river, right? So many people get so upset about, oh my God, what's happening? The fear of, are we gonna die? Are we gonna have cancer? That is very emotionally charged, and it's their reality, because it has been written down as our reality, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're exposed to this, you have this, and you have this. A plus B equals C. So we're setting A into motion. You can figure out B and C at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have done that. Just like I just had a conversation with someone. For those who know our story, we've been trying to adopt and get pregnant for the last, 6 years. I'm turning 40 this year. And of course, you have the people, well, now you can't get pregnant or you're getting to this age where it gets more risky. I'm like, who says that? Who says that? Who has put
Of
A plus
course.
B equals C down that aligns with my body? And it only aligns with my body if I agree to it, right?
Hmm. So the thing that I find fascinating in my reality, and people may or may not know this about me that watch this or may or may not know me, but I'm adopted, right?
Mhm.
So great. So the one cool thing about being adopted, like I literally look like my mother. I came into the family I was absolutely meant to come into. There's no question in my mind. It was just I had to do it a different way.
Yeah.
And I was adopted at like three months or whatever. So my parents are my parents for sure. However, what's fascinating is doctors would always be like, well, what about your family history? I don't know it. And it was so great because they have never, ever been able to say, oh, you have this thing in your history. So we've got to, and you've got this in your history, and you've got that, and you've got that. And
Yeah.
I have dealt with serious illness. Um, However, it's like, no, I don't have to, none of like, and what got me better, I had a chronic illness. And what got me better was literally when I realized, like, I can get better. It
Yeah.
wasn't, I've had, 11 surgeries in my life. I've had all sorts of stuff going on, all in a condensed sort of period of time. And then a couple that were a little later because of scar tissues and
Mm.
things like that. But what I realized was I'm not going to get better unless I get better, unless I get better. Right. And so it was a huge life lesson that I learned at a pretty young age. And the epigenetic reality and the thing of like, well, do you have heart disease? I don't know. So therefore, I don't. Right. And
Right.
even if I knew my family history, I'd be like, no, thank you. No, I don't, thank you. No. Because I've had people tell me certain things. I had shingles a while back, all over my face. Thank you. That was lovely. And everybody kept telling me how painful it was. And yeah, it felt like people were putting burning matches out on my face to a degree.
Great.
But the truth was, it was nowhere near the pain that everybody was describing to me because every time they kept saying that to me, I kept going, no, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. You
Well,
know?
in that regard, there's also the reality of in Europe, they're saying if you had the chicken pox as a child, you're more likely to avoid the shingles when you're an adult. In the US, they say the total
The
opposite. And
opposite,
yet it
exactly.
happens exactly how people are saying it because it's what we have been taught, as what we have been known to be true, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it's just like, to me, it's like all
And
these
what's
little
weird about that
scenarios.
too? What's weird about that too, really quick, because they didn't check me for that. Like it got
Hmm.
bad. It took over because they didn't check me because I wasn't in the age of people who were supposed to get shingles. So therefore, that wasn't even on their radar screen, which I think is really funny
Yeah.
because it's like, well, what if you're wrong? What if it's not something that's just,
Yeah.
50, 60 plus or whatever? What if that's not But instead it got really bad
Yeah.
before they actually went, oh, well, that's what you have. Really?
Isn't that fascinating?
Mm-hmm. And politics, you mentioned politics, and it's like there's a lot that can be said about politics. And there is, structures that have been put in place in the world that, are there, at least in the current illusion we happen to be functioning
Yeah.
in. And, but politics could never have existed if a bunch of individuals didn't get together and create an agreement,
The
right?
control, yes.
And somebody said, I have this idea, and then somebody else said, okay, I like that idea, and then somebody else said, yeah, we like that idea too, and somebody else, we like that idea too. And because they had more stature, I guess, in society and so forth, and more wherewithal and resource.
Influence, right?
Yep, they
Influence.
got to construct this reality that
Yeah,
has morphed and changed, and I honestly believe they'd be rolling over in their graves if they knew what was going on politically now. But
probably.
here's all of that stuff. Like look at like, what if, right? I'm going to say something slightly controversial. What if the Pfizer journey is not just the best journey you could ever witness in their creation of a reality? To me, it's the greatest branding story
Isn't it?
in our
Isn't it?
history.
They're phenomenal when it comes to marketing.
Yeah.
they're phenomenal in creating scenarios that make perfect sense to the logic mind, that again equals A plus B equals C, so it must make sense, so must be right. And
Mm-hmm.
people believe it,
Mm-hmm.
even though there is no proof behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a perfect example of manifestation almost instantly. If this doesn't work, well, then we're just still creating it, but then this obviously comes into play, and then we're creating this for it. It's fascinating to look at that.
And to take zero responsibility for what they were creating and have been creating as
Mm.
well. Zero responsibility, zero accountability. Nothing can come back or fall back on them, right? Nothing. It is a fascinating thing. And I think it's also a very controversial thing to say because people have such incredible stands on what this is and what this isn't. And, the whole point of, what if the mainstream media, what if the majority of media at this point in time, what if they're just all telling the story that they're being told to tell, right? Like, what if,
Yeah, and it
right?
doesn't even have to be something that someone is telling them, but they are told to tell that according to logical events adding up to each other. So it must be this, and so we have to report it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's much of a difference between CNN and Brighteon. I'm honest. Like when you look at what stories are being sent out, there are enough people on each side that believe that this is the truth. So therefore it is reality. So therefore, does that mean one is right, one is wrong? In the end, we only can, look at it from which one actually creates the frequency of love and which one doesn't.
Right.
And
Which
with
one
the
creates the frequency of
predictions,
fear?
none of them really do.
No, every on both sides, it seems like it's more about fear than anything else. It's more about fear. It's more about like it's neither one of them feel loving at all, whatever position they
No.
be. Neither one of them feel loving. I have a tendency to consider the fact that I think that they justify. I don't know so they stand for their belief and they'll
Mm.
it's like the hill that they'll die on, if you will, because if there was another possibility, then I don't know, the guilt, the pain, the shame, the blame, the whole thing could come in and say, oh gosh, I created, so therefore I will take the stand. I will be right in what I'm doing. I will be righteous.
Especially if you
Right.
have a couple 100,000 people following you, right?
Yeah,
I wrote an
absolutely.
I wrote an article a couple years ago. It's called "Will You Care About Me If I'm Well?" And so with that, we're already trained from a very young age. If I'm sick, I get mostly more attention from my parents. They have to stay home
Right.
with me. They can't go to work. They're not busy the whole time. When I puke, they have to hold my hair back, those kind of things. They wouldn't
Mhm.
do that if I'm well. So, will you care about me if I'm well? It's a very similar stand to what we see in media. If the world is right, if the world is all based on love, will you even care about me and the work that
Mhm.
I've been doing the entire time?
Mhm.
Right?
That's such a
Like,
great point. And
what?
it brings me to, like Bilderberg and World Economic Forum Davos and all those things where we have the mega elite uber billionaire class that gets together and literally collaborates in creating a reality,
Mm,
right? And then because they have influence through what if they do, let's just say, what if they have influence through all the world leaders, governments, what if they're seeding a lot of the governments, what if they're got positions on boards in the big corporations and so forth, and this whole sort of thing is flowing along and happening, and they basically say to everybody else, it will be this way,
yeah.
right? What if we, New Earth co creators, and all who are part of this incredible conscious community and economy and so forth, what if we just said, no? What if we
Yeah.
just say that doesn't work for me, right?
Right.
And
Pretty
and
much we
therefore
do by talking about it, right? I'm like,
we
no, it
do
doesn't work.
exactly. However, with say we have a few million people that are now part of this whole thing, for all the different organizations coming under the banner, coming in and doing this, but doing it as a collaboration as a whole, so that we are a conglomerate, right? We are an entity now that is a force as well.
Yeah.
And we simply say to these, this sort of new class, this elite class that's come through, and a lot of it's come through COVID. A lot of that sort of spawned through the whole COVID reality. The elite class was seemingly brought into the light, seemingly born in a way.
Yeah, because we give them power by the
Mhm.
way we
But
relate
what
to
if we
them.
take it away? What if
Well,
we just
yeah.
collectively say no? Right? What if we collectively start to do stuff like that? And that's the thing out of all of this conversation that I hope, whether somebody's a member of this community or not, I hope they join us, is that to just simply say, like, you actually have the authority to say no, and to not just accept these things because somebody up here somewhere, is telling you this is how it is,
And it
right?
goes for any side, it goes for any side that is extreme in we're all about inclusion, which in
Mhm.
the end creates more exclusion and diverse, not diverse, a division.
Division.
And as well as the other one, we only accept that what is, and we can scientifically prove or whatever. It is so difficult for people to even find the middle ground in things. So the question that I really want to ask people, no matter where you stand and what you believe your reality is, what if you actually creating this reality for yourself? What if you could turn around and say, you know what, I'm done with that. I just would love to live in peace. But what if we don't actually want peace? What if we need something? What if that is something that we have indoctrinated within ourselves, that we need something to fight for, we need something to stand for, that the if you don't stand for something, you stand against everything, or whatever it's called.
Well, and there's also a country song, one of the very few that I actually know that I remember. If you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything.
Oh, for anything. Yeah, that's yeah, that one.
But the what you're saying is kind of interesting and fascinating. I had a project called Pieces on Peace years ago at this point, and I wanted to put it into the world. And it was this collaborative journal, basically, for people to write what they thought peace was. And what was fascinating to me is the only contributions I got were from children, little children, right? That, drew pictures and stuff and came
Yeah.
into, because I realized that we as adults, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
we don't even know what peace looks like.
Mm-mm.
So this whole idea of we want peace, it doesn't work unless we start literally creating what that looks like. And that's, I think, the piece that's missing on this. What if we could do this differently? Well, great, but it's different. We've never seen it before. So how do we create that? I personally think it's getting together and beginning to talk about how we vision what the future looks like, and holding that space for one another. Not just this is how I see myself in the future, but
Yeah.
no, this is how I see the world. This is how I see humanity. This is how I see wildlife. This is how I see the oceans and the mountains. And this is how I see the future of corporations and all of these things.
When I went through coaching training, that's been now almost 13 years ago, we were talking about life purpose. There's an exercise called life purpose where we consistently ask people, what if you were to do, or what do you think you were supposed to do if the world were perfect? If you wouldn't have to, help anyone, if you wouldn't have to fight for anything. And the deeper you go, I'm like, oh, well, I would just do this and this. Well, what if you wouldn't have to do this either? What would you do? And it got to the point, the deeper you go, where people are like, I would be bored. I wouldn't know what to do. And then it comes down to, well, how would you feel in that place? And they literally like lonely, purposeless. So we're already craving for this challenge, for this uproar. So we feel a purpose. And for
Mm.
me, it's the question, how do we really get to the point where we can shift that internally?
Hmm.
For me, it only happens through meditation. If I can really get that time to either be out in nature, and I started that, and that made a huge difference for me since January. I think we mentioned it last time, where I literally go through the woods, I bless the trees, I bless the ground, the air, the water, and then I go through everything that I'm grateful for. And I have noticed, because of the heightened energy that comes with it, the emotional charge behind it, I've manifested so many things in a very short amount of time that also made clear what I didn't want, that came in
Hmm.
like, well, I should have been more, precise in what I wanted. But it does work because of the emotional charge. And ever since, like, when people come to me, I'm like, I have this and this issue and this problem, and you're part of the problem. I'm like, I'm not even aware of this. I don't know. Like, I didn't even know I did something or was supposed to do something. If you're not direct with me, I'm not doing anything about it. Like,
Hmm.
I don't feel that, you know. You really get to the point where, when you can honestly, and I'm not there yet, way far not, but
Work in
when you can,
progress, baby.
every time, right? But if you're really honest with yourself, and you just sit in silence and you ask yourself, what if I have been wrong all along? What if I could create whatever I wanted to create?
Hmm.
What if I could be part of the solution in reversing everything that's happening, instead of preparing for what I think is going to happen? What
When I,
if,
yeah, yeah. When I have this conversation with clients, it's always interesting to introduce to them because
Hmm.
they just like, well, yeah, but if I was really creating my life, I wouldn't have this and I wouldn't have that and I wouldn't have done this and this wouldn't have happened and this is not how I would feel. And it's like the
Yeah.
most important thing is to consider, like, okay, what if you are creating your life?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not, who is, right? Who's actually creating your life? If you're not doing it, who's doing it, right?
Who are
You're
you giving power to? Yeah.
exactly. And what do you, because then you're just living in reaction mode. That's all you're doing is randomly reacting to things and trying to be everything to everybody, showing up all over the place, trying to make sure everybody knows your name, trying to make sure that everybody gets what you're all about and all that kind of stuff. Constantly like go, 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 go. Got to let everybody know it's me, it's me, it's me. This is who I am. And it's like none of that actually works. Like no matter how much you do it, people can meet you and opportunities can arise, but at the end of the day, you're still not living in the world that you really want to live in because you're out there trying to be somehow valid,
Yeah.
right? Like somehow the external is going to happen. And when we actually take responsibility for that, it's like, okay, so what if I actually am responsible? Well, I have the ability to respond. I am accountable. I can account for my reality in life, and that, yeah, some really crap things happened,
Mm.
but I I contributed. My biggest lesson in that was a mentor. I'll be very quick with this story. She got shot in the face.
No.
Okay, so she's
Mm.
talking about being accountable, being like, okay, this is how it works. She got shot in the face one day coming back from the market. Nobody she knew, whatever, shot her in the face. She went to the hospital. She died on the table. She was being taken to the morgue. She came back. So she's in
Whoa.
their history books, yes. And she was completely changed because she had this huge spiritual experience on the other side. And that's when she became a teacher. And that's when she became a mentor. And that's when she started doing spiritual stuff and so forth. And she said the hardest lesson for her was this idea that she was creating her reality because she
Mm.
kept questioning her guides and teachers. And this is what she got on the other side before she came back. They basically said, like, this is something you have to own, right? In order to have the
Mm.
life that you truly deserve. And she fought that for the longest time because it's like, what would I have done to make a stranger pull out a gun and shoot me in the face? Right? What would that be about? Right?
Yeah.
And she realized over time, she said it took her months
Mm.
because it was unrelenting. It took her months to sort out what was going on. And she had a very contemptuous relationship with her mother,
Mm.
and they were arguing back and forth, and there was something going on in the family, and so she was having to deal with her mother constantly, and she'd gotten to the point where she was like, oh, she wished that her mother just would die,
Mm.
basically, would be off this planet. And she went off to the store, and lo and behold, here's this energy of somebody in violence literally acting out. And she said when she had that epiphany, everything
Because what
changed
you
in
do
her
to
world.
others, you do to yourself.
Well,
And
it's
of
just an
course, when it
energetic
comes to a
attraction.
mother-daughter relationship, right? You are your
Mhm.
mother.
It's an energetic attraction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a huge, huge, huge lesson for me. And it made me look at a lot of things that have happened because I've been a victim of some pretty extreme violence. And it
Yeah.
was really interesting to look at that and go, okay, how did I contribute to that experience? It sounds so weird and wonky and all of that, but the reality of it is it's so freeing because they say you forgive not for the other person,
That's
you
true.
forgive for yourself,
Yeah.
right? You forgive to free yourself. So it's like, this is exactly what we're talking about. What if life could be a whole lot better when you just realize like you've played a role? And then people will always say, because I have a one woman show that I've illustrated this in, and people will always say, well, what about children who die? Or what about bad things happening to good people? And I always take this position of just like, well, who am I to judge a soul's growth? And the only thing
That
I
is
can
true.
say is for children that have passed, for people that have had terrible things happen to them, so many foundations, so many nonprofits, so much healing, so many things have happened that are amazing
And I
in
can
the
attest to that, to
after
the
effect of
healing
that,
process.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, the easiest story is just recently, you know about it. We had a temporary placement of a 3-year-old, right? Just within the week she was with us, I learned so much. And I looked at her, I'm like, girl, you're 3 years old, but what you're bringing to this family has been so much healing and on so many levels. And I think she knew that because I know now the family that she is going to live with, she just, embraced them from the very
awesome.
first time she saw them.
Mhm.
And I knew it was exactly what needed to happen. Again, and it made me aware, like the last 6 years, why did I think it would be so hard? Why did I accept it as a difficult journey as that I needed to accept as such,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so it really is only this honest question. I'm like, what if I'm wrong? What if I don't know anything? What if I still could figure it out though?
Mhm. I surrendered to the idea I know nothing a while ago. Like I know
It's
absolutely nothing.
true. When you get to that point, like even if what
I
you
think that's
think is
enlightenment,
true,
or at least
yeah.
the edge of it. I know nothing. Oh, wow. Great.
Well, you start to experiment. You actually start to play. You see every lesson that comes in, like, oh, what if I could approach that lesson in a different way? What if I could understand more about my body, whatever illness might come or not
Right,
come, right?
right.
What if I can respond differently to people that did that to me or this to me or whatever the situation is, right? So it's always this internal shift of what if, and then
Mhm.
choose. And I think for me, it has really been this practice. And again, it's a constant practice because you fall really fast into old patterns of judgment. Um, what if I were to simply come from a place of love? How would I see this? And I said something to someone else this morning because she has been on her journey for a very, very long time, healing, and it just seems to be getting darker and darker. What can I
Mm.
do? And I said, why don't you get off the roller coaster? Why don't you just stop that roller coaster of what you think healing is supposed to look like and step off
And
and
decide to
make the
be healed.
decision? This
Yeah,
is no longer working for me. I want to
decide
be
to be
done with
healed.
this. Can I
Yeah,
just be? So we're
exactly.
going back to last week, right? Can we just be? How do we choose to be?
Right. And you mentioned illness, and this crossed my mind. So I wanted to say this very quickly because I know we're down to like 3 minutes.
No, no.
So the reality of like when they say to people who might be struggling with illness or anything that are hearing this, when they say, oh, there's nothing more we can do for you,
Mm,
right? Well, here's the reality of that. What if what they're really saying is medicine has we can't
it's
medically do
limits.
something, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that you can't heal. It doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that there isn't another treatment, there isn't alternatives, there isn't food as medicine, there isn't, energy healers like myself or acupuncture, all these alternative, compound pharmacists. There's all sorts of choices,
Mm,
right? But people hear when a doctor says, well, there's nothing more we can do, they feel like they're written the prescription that you're done, right? And it's like, no, they're just simply saying that medicine and science as we know it has reached the wall, but there's a
yeah.
whole other world beyond that wall. So I just needed to say that because you mentioned illness, and I just sort of was like, oh yes, please, because we go all over the place. Um,
Well, I think we say okay too fast to too many things. Like, oh,
yes,
okay, that's what it is. That's simply what it is. Instead of Hmm.
Herd mentality. I was watching a documentary, esoteric. I can't think of the other word. It's very good. It's on Gaia TV. But they were saying that they've shown statistics where at least 80% of the population are kind of dealing with herd mentality, where they just go with it. And other
Yeah.
people's opinions influence their opinions and away they go. And it's like, well, what if we could actually think for ourselves? That's an important one.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to like, what if everybody could think for themselves? And if that's the case, and you're thinking these ladies are crazy, but I like them, and this is an
We
interesting
haven't
community.
figured it out. We're still asking what if.
Exactly. And you have no idea really what we're talking about when we talk about New Earth. Go to newearthcc.org and
Yes.
please check us out. We would love to have you as part of the community. Final thoughts, Miss Isabel.
Final thoughts. I feel like those were our final thoughts. It's what if nothing is wrong or right? What if everything you've ever done is just an illusion? What if all of your belief systems are not actually really existing? What if you can change everything you have ever experienced in the way you wanted to?
Effortlessly.
What if, yes,
Effortlessly.
what if we can create only from a place of love?
Mm, wouldn't that be beautiful? And what
Yeah.
if that just starts with the simple decision to love yourself right now, in
Oh,
this moment?
I know.
Yeah. I
And
think,
what if we can do that together?
yeah. Well, we love ourselves and we love one another,
Yeah,
right? We become capable if we accept, love, forgive, accept. If we can do that, we can do that for the world.
I love it.
And,
Well,
and that's a beautiful thought. So, on that note, I guess we'll see you guys next week.
that's
And as
right.
always, my friend, it's such fun and such a delight. I'd do this every morning if we could.
Oh yeah, if I had the time, I would.
All right, everybody. newearthcc.org. We love you.
Definitely. Together we rise, right?
Together we rise.
All right. Have a great day.
Peace.